Conor Devine, I'm 43 years of age. I grew up in Cookstown in County Tyrone. Born in 1977, so it was an interesting time to come into the world. I suppose, up until the ceasefire, I lived up to my teens through the Troubles. And looking back now, I can remember the T-Ban bomb whenever it went off just outside Cookstown. And it was a horrendous experience for everyone in the town, and all those people who lost their lives on one side of the community. And, all of the other atrocities. I was playing Irish League football at the time whenever the Oma bomb went off for Dungannon Swifts. I was in the clubhouse when the news came through, and whenever you look back at your life, Henry, all these experiences, they don't go away. I also suffer from multiple sclerosis. I get very ill in 2006, and I was really ill and I had a really tough time with illness for about 4 or 5 years. Thankfully, in the last 4 or 5, I've been able to reverse that and come back to a form of health. And my life experience to date has been that we are all a product of our environments. And that is very telling whenever you look at your health. And I've looked at addiction. People who suffer from addiction often they trace it right back to when they grew up and the trauma in the home. And I think it also works for politics. We are all a product of our environments, and if you take that helicopter macro view then of existence, living in Northern Ireland, it's a very, very interesting way to look at things. And so me growing up in Tyrone, playing Gaelic and soccer, very young, I started to mix with people from the other side of the community, and that was an interesting experience in itself because most of my friends would have stayed to the Gaelic and didn't get that opportunity to mix with the other side. And looking back, I thought I was always then immediately in an advantage because I was playing football and creating friends and networks with people from the other side of the community. And I now know, looking back, Henry, that was a huge advantage to me growing up because I was brought up in a good home. We were brought up to respect one another and treat everyone as you would like to be treated yourself. Just what I would call very normal, good upbringing. But I had always this awareness of what was going on in the outside world, being the Troubles, and the impact that had sort of on me as a kid growing up in Tyrone. And then I went to university in Jordanstown, and what I've done in my life is I've travelled around the world to America and Australia. And I think once you travel, Henry, you get a different experience and you have a different outlook on the world and how things sort of happen. And I've brought that home. I became a chartered surveyor. I'm a professional person, so I'm a member of the Royal Institute of Chartered Surveyors for over 15 years. And I've spent the last 20 odd years sort of building a business. I'm an entrepreneur, I suppose, at heart. I like to solve problems. I own a debt advisory practice, so I'm solving problems and have been solving issues for business owners, for families for 10 odd years with my practice GDP partnership. So, I've been very fortunate, Henry, in that in my sporting career, which a lot of the characteristics that I have, I think, has come from that. I did quite well at sport, played Irish League, as I said, for 10 odd years until I got very sick. And then from a professional point of view, I've been very fortunate over the last 15, 20 years, Henry, because I have worked with some incredible people, some really successful people, some really difficult people. And at the heart of this is, humans are difficult, full stop. People are difficult. People are problematic. What I seem to really like is trying to help people, trying to solve problems. And if you look at our practice and you look at some of the work we've been doing in the professional sphere, I hope that comes through. So that's really, where I'm at now is we have a practice in Belfast. I own a funding business and a debt advisory practice. We've probably brought close to about £180 million of new money into the Northern Irish economy in the last 5 or 6 years. I sit on the policy committee of the Federation of Small Businesses in Belfast. So I've been on that for a couple of years, and I suppose I've a very integral understanding of what's going on out there in Northern Ireland and the challenges that we face from a business perspective, from a banking financial perspective, and then from a political sort of perspective, because I probably am a political animal at heart. I've always sort of kept an eye on politics. I don't belong to any political party. I've remained very sort of neutral on that. I've sort of gravitated to a position now where I'm really keen to try and contribute in a positive way to moving this place forward. I have a 10-year-old and a 7-year-old homeschooling at the moment. I think one of the challenges in society right now, Henry, and particularly in politics, is that we have this tendency to focus on the here and the now. And I think that's a real problem. I'm more interested in what is this place going to look like in 2040. So my 10-year-old today, will be 30 in 2040. You and I know that's going to come around in the flash of a click of a fingers. So what is this place going to look like in 2040? What's Liliana's life going to look like in 2040? What's her job prospects going to look like? Her economic prospects, her health. What's her environment going to be like over the next 10 to 20 years? And I think that gives you some context to me, is sort of working on the professional sphere, trying to do what I can to make that better for her and others. And then from a political context, it's very difficult not to get sucked in or involved in some of the political thinking in Northern Ireland. And I think where we're entering now, Henry, is 5 years of flux. We're certainly in referendum territory. Brexit changes everything, and I can foresee these kinds of conversations, which I think is a really good thing, happening now very regularly. Words are very important in Northern Ireland in particular, because we're easily offended. And is it a united Ireland? Is it a shared island? I mean, one of the things I've been thinking about, nobody really owns the land here. Unionist people, nationalist people, we don't own the land. We share the ground. We have to get on. We've been getting on. I think that's a psychological problem and barrier for lots of people. How do I visualize moving forward? I think we're in the space where we have no option but to consider how we all move forward. And what I mean by that is the status quo is completely unacceptable. It has to be a new Ireland, a new arrangement. We need more new opportunities. Northern Ireland in its current state doesn't work, is not working for anyone. And we'll get into the reasons for that now, which I have come to understand in the last 18 months. And it's a fundamental problem. And if what I am saying is correct, which I believe it to be, and I'll qualify that shortly, then the only option is to start exploring what other options do we have. If Northern Ireland's not working for everyone, then the natural route of travel is going to be, well, what is our next option? And the other options then are this united Ireland, new Ireland, a federal Ireland. What is that all going to look like? And that's exactly the space where I knew this was all going to happen, Henry, whenever Nelson McCausland said in Nolan 2015 or 16 that regardless, it's Brexit over everything. He aired a view which has went mainstream that as far as he was concerned, and that school of thought was that it didn't really matter as long as Northern Ireland was out of the European Union. I think, to be honest, that kind of commentary which that party has progressed has had a devastating impact to people psychologically. And off the back of that, then this has really transformed this conversation which we're having today. And so many people now, and so many of my network's probably split 50-50 in terms of my reach and the both sides of the community. But all sides of both sides are now talking to me around this new discussion, around this new island, what it may or may not look like. To answer your question directly, we don't know the answer to that yet. We don't know what it's going to look like. What I do know is we need to start talking about that. And that's one of the reasons why we're having this conversation, is what is this new island going to look like? What shape is it going to take? How do we protect people's identity? Is that important to people? Have we enough money to build our economy, to invest in our people? All of those things, I mean, is what's going to form the basis of this discussion over the next number of years. I'm not a political expert. I'm contributing, and me and you's talking today. I'm a businessman. I'm interested in improving things. I'm creating jobs, investment. I'm interested in creating an environment in the next 10 to 20 years that's better than the one we grew up in. And I think we can. I think there's a really good opportunity, a fascinating opportunity with this new discussion. And part of that then is, because if you were to say the man in the street, if you stopped 10 people in Royal Avenue today and said, would you be up for a federal Ireland? They would say, well, what are you talking about, Henry? And that's something that I am trying to understand a bit more. And what does that look like? But I'll refer you back to the Beyond the Border book, Richard Humphreys. And actually, he has suggested in that book and the Good Friday Agreement, one of the things I find fascinating is that Northern Ireland, the actual 6 counties exist under the Good Friday Agreement into perpetuity. And I believe that was a hard one for Republicans at the time when they were negotiating to let into the agreement, but it's in the agreement. Stormont is to stay in situ in a new Ireland or a united Ireland. And I believe that those kinds of conversations, a federal solution where you have the North pretty much operating like in America, you have 52 countries, which works in the United States of America, 52 states. I think that's something, personally, I would like to see what that looks like. And I think that's something that probably could work.